I do a lot of speaking in front of groups, and I usually ask people, do you feel like this is the worst, most dangerous time that you have ever been alive? And most people will say yes, and things are just getting worse. By every metric, everything is actually getting better. I mean, it may not feel like that. I think it doesn't feel like that for people, because unlike previous generations, we see it on television, we see it on our devices, we have instant access to it, but literacy, I think in the 60s, 85% of the world's population of adults was illiterate. Right. Today, it's only 15%. Poverty, every day 250,000 people leave extreme poverty, which is not having access to water, clean drinking water, shelter, the basics. Wars don't last as long, less people die of violent death. Any of us in this room are much less likely to die of violent death than ever before. By every single metric, the world gets better, and yet, I feel like we don't feel that way at all.
This is the cutting edge of the unknown future. So historians will say, well, if you go back to Weimar Germany, I mean, it feels just like this. There are a lot of people who are doing stuff that is very reminiscent of the kind of othering that winds up with concentration camps and genocide. And there's a long history of it. It's not just the Nazis. I mean, it's like goes on, back to Columbus, the Native Americans, 400 years of slavery in this country that we've never really taken, sort of our responsibility for in a certain collective way, and what the long-term sort of implications of that are in our society. So I think in the sort of very brief time we have, what I would say, Anderson, is that in having brought mindfulness into medicine for the past almost 40 years, into the mainstream of medicine, where, the idea that you could bring meditation into medicine 40 years ago was like insane. And now it's like people realize it's an absolute critical part of it. What we've learned through the new science of neuroplasticity, the new science of epigenetics, the new science of telomeres and aging and so forth, is that the human being, not just the human body or the brain, is unbelievably, the word that they use is plastic. In other words, how we intend to cultivate ourselves influences every conceivable biological and psychological and social interactive function that we have. So in terms of the potential directing of not biological but cultural evolution, we have an insanely unique and precious moment and opportunity to do this. And in a sense, all of the horror that we might feel is part of this is also a tremendous opportunity. And yes, we've never been quite here before because of the digital age and how we're, completely caught up in, the imprisonment of our devices and so forth, and distracted perpetually. But there's also a deep interior connectivity that if we can have it with ourselves and have it with each other, non-digitally as well as digitally, then, in fact, we've already changed the world, even if it doesn't seem that way. And if we keep that practice up, moment by moment, day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year, decade by decade, my own sense is that if I saw some other doorway to the beauty and freedom of humanity is expressing itself in its fullness and not the toxicity that's going to, in some sense, destroy it, I would be doing that. But I've never found anything more powerful than mindfulness. And it starts here. If you're not practicing, then it's just blah, blah, blah about mindfulness. It's like turning it into one more thing, one more product, one more commodity. It's too deep for that. And with the show of hands that Anderson asked for, that's really extraordinary. If we were having this meeting 30 years ago or even 10 years ago, almost nobody would have raised their hand that they were meditating. This is actually a social phenomenon. It's not just me doing a little stress reduction for myself.
Do you worry about the spread of it in that way? About it sort of morphing into either another should or that it becomes a commodity, that gets marketed like everything
I worry about that a lot. It's happening because it's inevitable that some people, whenever anything becomes hot or, sort of people talking about it a lot, then people want to exploit it or, get on the bandwagon.
By the way, I'm marketing Anderson Cooper Mindful t-shirts outside, so... I tried, but...
So there you go. But, my optimism really stems from the fact that the feeling tone in this room, the feeling tone in all of the places that I wind up going where people care about this in a deep way, including 2 weeks ago in the Parliament in Ottawa, the Canadian Parliament. Next week, I'll be in the Parliament in the UK, where hundreds of parliamentarians are practicing mindfulness. Never, ever happened before on the planet. And they're inviting parliamentarians from 30 different countries to come to London on that day to talk about how this could actually be leveraged in ways that get beyond the kind of dualism that's so much a part of the political process, and that's so much. What I was saying is that we've learned in medicine something that applies not just to the body, but I think metaphorically at least it needs to be applied to the body politic. If we begin to look at ourselves as all cells in the one body of the planet, then things like, say, the levels of income inequality that we've driven in the past 30 or 40 years, it's like a heart saying, like, we like the way we look, and we are like really important. We pump all the blood. So screw you, brain and liver. We're not going to give you enough blood to actually just even do your thing. We wouldn't last very long if the body were operating on that kind of capitalistic greed, hatred, and delusion principle. And I think we need to look at that, whether it's bankers, whether it's the economy, whatever it is, that we need some kind of redistribution of blood in the society so that everybody is fundamentally healthy enough to do the interior work that leads to a healthy planet, a healthy world, a healthy climate. I don't see any alternative to that. Everything else is kind of a quick fix. And medicine has demonstrated very, very few cures in medicine, very few quick fixes. But healing is always possible right up into the moment you go. And that itself is not necessarily a failure. It's just part of the way things are.